What's going on, guys? Nick Sakha here in another episode of A1 Agents. I've got a really good friend of mine on today's episode. He goes by the name of Chris Draper. Chris started his insurance agency when he was only 25 years old. He started from scratch and grew it to just under $30 million in premium, both organically and through acquisitions. He recently sold his book of business and got out of the insurance industry to put his full attention into real estate investing and other endeavors. And in just 18 months, he's flipped over 30 houses. He's done over 40 wholesaling contracts, and he's just getting started. I know he's a father. He's just a good man. I had the honor of meeting him last year, or maybe it was a year and a half ago, and just a friendly, humble guy. And I'm honored that he's given me his time. And so, Chris, thank you for being with us.
Man, I tell you, with an introduction like that, dude, I'm blushing a little bit, Nick. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm looking I'm looking forward to providing your audience a lot of value. I've been doing a lot of things in a couple of different industries right now, and finding some mistakes along the way, certainly. So if I can help a few folks sidestep some mistakes on their journey to where they want to be, then that's all I'm looking to do, is just provide a lot of value and maybe a little bit of entertainment along the way too, right? Let's not take ourselves too seriously, man. Let's have fun with this. I'm ready. Let's
Yes,
go.
yes, sir, man. Well, I love your story, man, because the majority of my audience that I have kind of not accidentally built, but a lot of people that watch my YouTube channel, they're either just getting started in the insurance industry, or they are, experienced insurance agencies and things like that. And you have, I guess, I don't know how to put this, but you've been there and done that. Like, you've built such an amazing insurance business, and you exited successfully, and now you're successfully conquering a different industry. And I can't wait to just pick your brain. So tell my audience a little bit about who you are and what your story is.
Sure. So I'm actually born and raised here in Houston, Texas, and spent all my life here. A couple of years moving around as a kid, but for the most part, this is where I call home. I'm very familiar with it and comfortable with it. And so, when I moved back from college, of course, it wasn't even an option. My family was here, and my mom's like, "Hey, you got to get back to Houston. Don't none of this Austin or Dallas talk." So I moved back to Houston, and not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life. Right, I was 22, 3 years old, and I do what everyone else does when they get out of college and go find a corporate job, right? And so I got hired on as a sales rep for a Fortune 500 company and outside sales, and I had a ton of experience because I've been working full time since I was 15, and that was my competitive advantage, kind of to get that job. I had to compete for it. It was cool. It was a little round robin hiring process. About 35 people showed up, and I was the first one that my sales manager interviewed. And I sat down with him and I said, "Well, Todd, you don't have to worry about interviewing any of these other guys, because I'm going to be the best fit for this position. So I'm just going to save you a lot of time and energy and money." Of course, they still interviewed the other guys, but I got the job anyway. I guess he thought maybe I was, a little cocky, and that he could mold me into a good salesperson, which he did. I owe a lot to Todd Taylor. So, but having said that, I did that job for a couple of years, and it was easy to me, but I still learned a lot. But I was uncomfortable at it. I just felt like it wasn't my calling, and that I was destined to do more. As corny as that sounds, it was the same thing. After about 6 months, I just got in this routine where I was only working like 20, 25 hours a week, and leading the region, which was 5 states. And I mean, I was just 24 years old, and making good money, and just really not having any direction with what I wanted to do with my life, or my career long term. I definitely didn't want to be like some of the older guys that have been around in corporate America in the sales roles that they were in for forever. And so I was very fortunate to meet a guy whose whole entire family was a group of Allstate insurance agents, and we joked about it. Actually, it was like the Allstate insurance agency mafia, because it was like his dad was an agent, his brother's an agent, all of his uncles were agents, and his cousins. And so after hearing a little bit about their business model, and the opportunity that present itself, that they could get me interviewed, which at 24 years old at the time when I was hired, is almost unheard of, really, for them to hire someone that young. They're looking for people at the time. This was back early 2000s, 2004, before. At the time, they were really looking for people that had kind of, made their careers already and had a lot of experience managing teams and running, maybe running other businesses. And I didn't have any of that. I had never had anyone work for me. I didn't know a thing about insurance. It was funny. I was literally, I remember taking my insurance exam and getting stuck on a question of, what does comprehensive cover? Like, I had a
Yeah.
lapse in my studying there for the exam. And so I really had no business opening my insurance agency at 25. It was the day after I turned 25. I mean, I literally knew nothing. But what I did have going for me is I had the just drive and determination that, hey, I'm going to make this work no matter what. And so it's literally one of those moments where I move in, I sit down. It's the first day. I'm at my desk, which I got for free from the suite above me when they moved out. I'm looking around, and I just fear. I'm just like, I lose all color. I get sick to my stomach, and I'm like, what did I just get myself into? I have no
Yeah.
business being here, right? Like, so I had to get over that fear, and I did it by just putting my head down and going to work and outworking everybody. I mean, 14, 16-hour days. I was used to that. I was working full time all through college and working at a car dealership, which is a lot of hours anyway. And so, I was paying for school as I went and working a lot of hours. So I just translated that type of work ethic into my scratch agency, right? I started with no customers, no employees. I was taking out the trash. I was making sales calls. I didn't even know what an endorsement was. I had to hire someone to do my endorsements because, quite frankly, I didn't know what I was doing. So it started off a little rocky, let me tell you. And for some of your audience, if you're feeling that, yeah, you're doing something right then, because it should feel a little bit awkward when you start something new. But let me tell you, it was a great opportunity, and I learned so much about myself in those early years, and then obviously really honed in on those successful agents around me and what they were doing, and did everything that I could to learn from them so I could shortcut some of those mistakes early on that would have either burnt me out or put me out of business, right? I mean, it's very difficult to start a scratch insurance agency. It was then, it is today. But the good thing is there's, with the internet now and podcasts like this and YouTube, there's a lot of resources out there that are free. So, if I could go back and do it all over again, man, I'd like to say that I'd had the same success. Maybe I could have got there a little faster by utilizing some of the tools out here that's now available through guys like you that are doing great things by paying it forward and really providing your audience with a lot of value.
Yeah, and I don't know if you could do it much faster than you did it, because that kind of is a lead in for my next question, which is you've accomplished more you were an agent for how long? 17 years or 18 years?
17. Yeah. So almost 18
Seven-
years. Yeah.
Okay. But you did more in 18 years than what most agents will do in like a 30, 40-year career. And that's what honestly is I just had to get you on my on this thing, right? And so if you had to, I guess, and there's a lot of questions kind of like this, but if you had
Sure.
to say that there was one lesson that you learned as an agent that every other agent must learn, what would that be?
Man, I've had people ask me that before. And of course, with success comes a lot of invites to speak at various leader forums and other business conferences, especially within the insurance industry. And so I love that. That was probably the favorite part of my run, so to speak, was getting to, like I said, give back and teach what I've learned to either new agents or agents that are maybe just kind of stuck in a rut. But I would say the number one biggest, most valuable skill set that I learned, again, I didn't necessarily have it in the beginning, or I didn't know that I had it, was being adaptable, right? Because there's so much that's thrown at you, especially when you're a new agent or just starting out, or even if you've been around for 30 years. I mean, it's always changing, whether it's the insurance industry, whether it's banking, whether it's whatever industry. Real estate, huge example, right? The markets are always, booming or crashing, or interest rates are going up. And so, you have to be adaptable with making smart decisions about the best and most efficient way of using your time, money, resources. And, that I think is what helped get me over some of those low years where, for example, here in Houston, the company went about 4.5, 5 years and didn't offer homeowners insurance. at all. I couldn't write a homeowner's policy because of the hurricane exposure that we had taken on prior to me becoming an agent. We insured at the time like 7 out of 10 homes. And then Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana. The company went, wow, if that would have hit Houston, we would have gone literally bankrupt, out of business. Company wouldn't have been there that I represented. So for 5 years, they said, no, we're good on homeowners insurance. Y'all guys go write something else. You know, we got car insurance and flood insurance and umbrellas. And so we got really good at writing those three things. And we're able to get past that hurdle where a lot of other agents just quite frankly couldn't adapt and ended up washing out, selling their businesses and going to do something else. So yeah, adaptability, I think, is the key to being successful in any business, because you always got something that's going to come up and got to figure out a way either over the wall, around the wall, or my way was always just kind of through the wall.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I don't know if it's, I think you have a little bit more experience than me. I know you do. And that is that, would you agree that things are moving even faster today than they were 10, 15, maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah,
Or
definitely, for sure. Totally. I mean, you got to look at technology and all the advances that have been made. There's so much money being spent in insurance tech right now that it's crazy. I mean, at the end of my career in the insurance space, I was pretty fortunate that I didn't have to clock in and go to the office every day. That was another great thing about being adaptable, is I was able to learn quickly the roles within the business that I didn't like to do or wasn't good at, and then delegated those out. And if I didn't have someone to do those roles, I would hire someone that I could train, to do that. And so at the end there was so much change for probably like the last 3 or 4 years when I wasn't really going to the office, that by the time that I exited, man, I couldn't tell you what was going on.
yeah,
Someone asked me
yeah.
what flood insurance would cost on their house, and I tell them, you know, 400, 500, $600 maybe. And then they go get a quote from my staff and it was $2,000. And I'm like, sorry, I don't quote anymore. But yeah, it's changing super fast. So being adaptable, that's, like I said, that's a skill set where you can keep up with change and then modify what you're doing, to still be successful.
And another thing, just before I pivot into our next question, is it's not only being adaptive, but being positive during all the changes. Because the ones that are just negative about every single change, and they're just resistant, and they're just, whether that's your staff, because you as the leader are not positive about the changes, then that's going to spill over onto your team. And
It,
there
it
are a
all
lot of
rolls,
things.
it all rolls downhill, man. I would have days where I literally wanted to bang my head on the wall, like physically hurt myself because it was that bad. And it's okay. That happens. But don't let your staff see you do that, because they're going to take that negative energy and it's just going to be like a cancer within your business. And I would bring that home. Poor wife sometimes would catch the brunt of that or whatever. But don't let the staff see it, man. You got to be positive, like you said, pump them up and let them know, look, just because we're not writing homeowners insurance doesn't mean that there's a million cars out there that need insurance in Houston. Let's go get them. Let's go. Let's put some programs together. Let's put an action plan together. We don't need no stinking home insurance to be successful. And we didn't. And it's funny looking back. I actually borrowed, right, because I didn't. Nothing that I ever did in the insurance space, or even especially now in the real estate space, I created on my own. I always, borrowed from those who are smarter and earlier to implement ideas. But I borrowed a flood insurance postcard from an agent in Florida who hadn't written home insurance on company paper in his entire career, because Florida is a peninsula and it's Hurricane Alley, right? And so he led with flood insurance, and I was like, you know what? That's brilliant. No one's doing that. So that's what I did. That's one of the ways that I adapted. And my staff was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? The sky is falling. I'm like, I got this. Don't worry. And then I turn around. I'm like, what am I going to do? I get home or get in the car, after I cried for about 10 or 15 minutes every day on the way home, I'd snap out of it and say, all right, I got to do something different, because if we keep doing the same thing as everyone else, we're going to be right there in the middle of mediocrity. And that's probably the the single biggest focus that I try, whether times were good or whether times were bad, is to not just fall in the middle and do what everyone else was doing. Push the envelope, think outside the box, lead with flood insurance. I mean, no one does that, right? And so we were able to look like a hero. When someone would call in, we would quote their flood insurance, say, by the way, who does all your other insurance? And we would just easily pivot, cross sell. And it didn't work every time, but man, we had as I exited the insurance space, our agency, bundling score was important to the company. And so we had like a 78% bundling, even with those years where we couldn't write home insurance on company paper. We were still able to bundle, whether it was with a broker company or something else, or we would find another policy that they would need, like an umbrella or something. So yeah, definitely, you can't let your staff see you crying in the car, sitting in front of the
Yeah.
office. Drive down the street a little bit before you start tearing up.
There's this quote, never let him see you sweat. And I don't know where I heard it, but it's just stuck with me. And just don't let him see you sweat.
That's right.
Um, So I got to tell the story about when I met you. Obviously, I am in no way, shape, or form a real estate investor. Not yet, right? I'm claiming it in the future, but not yet. I barely bought my own residence finally, and I'm glad I did. But I
Congratulations.
go, but I go to a real estate, not event, but like a mastermind, just to increase my knowledge. And I'm probably the dumbest guy there. And here I see you walk in, uh, you know, like the energy of the room. You're the first one to shake everyone's hands, looking everyone in their eyes, smiling. You just bring all this energy, and I'm like, that's a cool guy. I have no idea what he does, but that's a cool guy right there. Um, and then I'm sitting next to you, and I'm legit. Working on my laptop, right? I'm working on my laptop, and I'm cutting payroll because payroll's due, and then we start chopping it up, and I'm like, I think you asked me, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, Allstate. Like I've got a few agencies out in Vegas. And you're like, do I? You're like, I've got like 5 in Texas. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how do I not know this guy?
I probably
Um,
asked you why you were doing your own payroll or something silly like that. Like, what do you mean you're doing your own payroll, dude? Don't do
yeah.
that. Like, pay
And,
attention.
and you, what was really cool to hear about from you was that you had built your agency up to where, and I know you said it took a couple years to get there, but you built your agency up to where it ran without you, 100% without you, and it allowed you to really get a head start on, this awesome real estate, career that you're building. And so I had to tell that story. I would love to learn a little bit more about, how you built your agency up to kind of run on autopilot a little bit later. But one quick question that I have for you is how do you stay organized? Are you a planner guy? You use it all on your cell phone? Like how do you manage your days?
Man, I tell you, that is something that I still struggle with to this day, even after scaling multi-million dollar businesses. I mean, it's just, for me, I'm not as organized. I'm not the guy to learn tips from on this. I rely heavily on my operations manager. I had her for about 10 years in my insurance business, and I kept her on the payroll. It's a funny story. Even after I sold the business last year, I kept her on the payroll for a few months. I said, look, I don't know what position may or may not be available in the real estate space, but I don't want to lose you to anybody. So come run with me. We'll figure out what to do. And so, she was that valuable to keeping me organized that I said, I'm going to find a way to, transfer that wealth of experience and knowledge and knowing me, right? Because we've worked together for so long, we worked so well together, that I brought her over into the real estate investing space actually last month. She started after the first of the year. And so one of the tools that we both, and she's what's called my integrator. And so I read this great book by Gino Wickman called Rocket Fuel. And the idea is an entrepreneurial operating system. And that really helped keep me focused on the business objectives that I need to be paying attention to. So it taught me the importance of KPIs, key performance indicators. It taught me the importance of delegate and elevate. Anything that I didn't like to do or wasn't good at, man, I found someone to do that. And so doing those things and taking an audit, like for example, of what my daily task that I had to get done looks like for an entire week, Monday through Sunday, right? Like what is everything on my plate that is a recurring task that I have to complete, and look at that and see what I can trim out. Because if you don't have time to work on your business, then you're just a overpaid employee, right? Or maybe even an underpaid employee, depending upon where you're at in the business. And so I knew after reading that book, I'd been doing it wrong for so many years. And what's interesting is I read that book and I read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week like the same month. Both of those books kept me captivated that I finished them cover to cover very quickly. And so those two books changed my life, because again, I had been at this point probably 12, 13 years into my business, had been doing it wrong for probably the last 8 or 9 of that 12 years. And so learning different ways from people that have been there and done that. And by the way, neither of those guys are in the insurance space, but they're in successful business entrepreneurial space. And that's where I wanted to be. And I just didn't know how to get there. So those two books were kind of the foundation roadmap to keep me organized and on task, and focused on ultimately stepping away from that business, because I had all my eggs in that basket, right? Diversification. The average millionaire has 7 streams of income. I didn't have the one, right? And it was my agencies. And if something were to happen to me, or the business model or the corporate direction, like, I'd be left holding the bag. And so I knew I had to make a change. And by delegating and elevating and getting rid of things on my to-do list every week that necessarily I didn't have to do, I can delegate those out to someone else to do, really helped me be a lot more organized to dive in and start working on the business, so I can buy back my time, step out of it eventually, and then go on to diversify into real estate investing. I've got, an Amazon e-commerce store and some other things going on now that I would not have had I not realized that, and I was doing it wrong all those years. And it took massive action to retrain my mind and my habits to get to that point to where I can delegate it and trust that it's being done right, step away from the business, and then it becomes a point of just inspecting what you expect.
Yeah. I want to touch on something that you said there. Was there I'm a full believer in the power of focus, and that every business needs a certain amount of focus before you can start separating that focus. And that's been, I guess, one of the downfalls of why prior to insurance, I never got anywhere. Like, nothing ever really took off for me because I focused on way too many things. Is there a specific amount of time or maybe book size or anything that you were like, if you could go back, like, this is when I would have started diversifying, sooner, or later in any instance?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's going to be different for each person. I think really what you have to look at it as what stage you are in your business. Again, this translates to whether you're an insurance agent or a real estate investor, or even working for a corporation. So the first step is your infancy phase, where you're just trying to like pay your bills, right? And man, let me tell you, I didn't do very good at that. I think I went like 100 grand in the hole with credit card debt and lines of credit. And I mean, it was like touch and go for a couple of months there, where I didn't think I was going to be able to cover even the interest payments on those lines of credits and those credit cards. So, in the very beginning, you're just trying to pay your bills, right? You want to get through the month. You don't want to run out of money before you get through the month. And so, man, there were days where I had a couple of cans of tuna and crackers all day, like that was my meal. I remember, like, I was in between places to live after I gave up my apartment so I can go be an insurance agent, right? I couldn't afford my high rent apartment anymore. And so I had to move in with, 3 other roommates. But before I could do that, I mean, I was like basically living out of my office in my car for like a couple of weeks. And so, that's the infancy phase. You want to be able to cover your bills. And then there's a next phase where you get comfortable. Not only are you covering your bills, but you're putting away a little bit of money every month, and you have a cushion, you have your emergency fund, as Dave Ramsey calls it. But you're living now within your means and comfortable, but you're not worrying about paying those bills every month. And then you get to the point to where you create excess. And I think once you're at the point where your business front to back, every role and responsibility within that business, and you have all your processes documented, and you have your KPIs, your key performance indicators, so you can keep track of the health of your business on a weekly basis, then it's okay to refocus your efforts, because now you have something you didn't have in the beginning when you started your business, right? You have experience, you have knowledge. The bank can't repo what's up here, the lessons that you learn from, marketing, from hiring good people that you can trust to delegate things that you don't like to do or don't want to do or you're not good at, and take all that and then apply that, to a similar business, something that's relatable to the current business that you're in. For me, I already knew a lot about roofs, right? Because we insured a lot of houses. And so I knew about construction from people's claims, just listening to the things that they struggle with over the years and how they dealt with contractors. And so I had a lot of title companies and realtors, right, that was referring me business. And so I even had a home inspector friend of mine that I went to church with that still to this day helps do my home inspections for me. And so I already had this Rolodex, this network of transferable, power. Your network, your net worth is directly related to your network, right? And so I already had a built-in foundation for real estate. That's why it was such an easy transition for me to go from insurance to real estate as a side hustle, because I already had some of the key people in the equation to help me jumpstart that business. And that's how it started. It started as a side hustle because I not only was paying my bills, I was putting away extra money every month. I was comfortable, and I had the business now set up pretty much on autopilot. And people ask me, they're like, how how did you make the decision to go a different direction? Well, after I realized I had all my eggs in one basket, and got to a point to where I had a lot of extra time during the day, I realized I suck at golf. All my friends are still working, right? They're still growing their businesses, or they're working for corporate America, so they can't come out and play during the day, right? Like, I was kind of bored. And so I knew, like, boredom is not a good thing during the day for a guy like me. I have, as you can tell, probably a little bit of ADD, but I was to the point where, like, what do I do with my day? What do I do with myself? So, attending masterminds was one way. I love to travel. That was a good thing about, being an insurance agency and winning all the trips and the trophies is, I got to travel the world on the company dime, and I got kind of used to that and excited about that. And so, at the end, when I had all this spare time, I was like, well, let me just go to Arizona, go to a real estate conference, see what this is about. Let me go to, I joined Ty Lopez Mastermind. I was in California like 3-4 times a year, beautiful Hollywood, California. And so, I tried to, make it a point to not just waste that time, because time is so valuable once you get to that level of, where you can buy back your own time. I just didn't want to waste it by sitting around watching TV or, going and playing golf for 8 hours a day. I mean, that just didn't excite me.
Yeah. So it sounds like it sounds like, which is really cool. I wish we were able to travel and do some of the trips nowadays. The pandemic kind of screwed that up.
Yeah.
But so now I'm traveling on my dime. But I can see why the route kind of worked its way out for you, because you got to travel, you got to experience things. It looks like you conquered the insurance industry, and it just felt right that you kind of challenge yourself in other things. Let me ask you, what we talked about your superpowers, at least through text, and I wanted to ask you and share. You've kind of explained on this some of the things you're not good at. You want to explain the 3 things that you would give yourself credit for that this helped you build your insurance agency, your 3 superpowers.
Yeah, so I think the first one we already touched on was adaptability. That was always one thing that, regardless of what situation I was at, like from the very beginning to getting some momentum and having some success, and then something happens within the market. I was always able to be adaptable and pivot and get to a point of comfort again. Now, that may take, on that pivot, a month, 6 months, 2 years, sometimes 5 years, right? But I was always able to kind of get to that next level and keep pushing through. And listen, I didn't grow all organically. Let's be clear. Like, I took advantage of market opportunities when the corporation allowed me to purchase agencies. And that's how I ended up with so many locations, is because some years, hey, I qualified to merge. And then other years I didn't qualify to merge, but I was allowed to get a satellite office. And so I would look for agency owners who were at the end of their career and built up nice, good, solid, stable, high retaining, customer base. And I would buy those guys out and then apply my marketing techniques and hiring techniques, and then grow their book of business, over time. So I was not only growing through mergers and acquisitions, but I was also putting it all back into the business to grow organically as well. That's how I ended up with such a large agency with so many locations, is by being adaptable, right? Taking advantage of those market conditions. If the selling season was hot and we were competitive, man, I doubled down and I put it all back into marketing. Some years we're not so competitive. We get someone coming in the market that just crushes us, and they're half our rates, and we would have the conversations with the customers and the prospects. Hey, listen, that's that's temporary. We've seen these companies come and go, and we're going to be here to stay and provide you this great service, and we don't want to lose you, but we understand, and we'll call you next year at the renewal. And we would lose customers, and then we'd win them back, sure enough, and the company would double rates the next year at their renewal. So being adaptable and learning how to pivot into using your resources differently and effectively, that would be probably, like I said, that's the main superpower. And then we texted back a few days ago, so I know you wanted 3. Is there one particular of those 3 that you saw that you wanted to dive into? Like I said, for the sake of time, I don't know if we can cover all of them, but which one do you like the most on the list?
Let's go into delegating. Delegating. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, in the beginning, I was doing everything. I was taking out the trash. I was filing claims for my customers. I was selling. I was trying to figure out how to do an endorsement, right? And so, the first thing that I did is I brought someone on that was really good at servicing my book of business. At that time, I didn't have my first employee until like a year and a half into agency ownership. And so I was just mainly focused on selling, right? And if I had an endorsement, I would just call someone to help me walk me through it and figure it out. And so I realized very quickly I didn't want to necessarily get caught in the weeds of service. And so I started segmenting my agency with just myself and my first employee, not even realizing that's what I was doing at the time, right? But segmenting delegates responsibility to a particular person, and that's their sole response. So I hired Brenda, my first ever employee. She was great. She had tons of like 20, 30 years experience, and all she wanted to do is just service the book of business. And she was just a sweet lady that everyone loved talking to her because she just make you feel like that warm and fuzzy after she hung up the phone, right? And I would get so many good, positive little emails or notes that, oh, Brenda's so sweet, you're so lucky to have her. And I was like, thank you. This is awesome, because now I can really focus back on selling, because the service was starting to take away from my sales. And so, I was sales, I was good at it, I could close over the phone, and then Brenda would just service the customer base. And so then I realized, I couldn't keep up with all the leads coming in. So I hired another salesperson. And then, so I had 2 employees. Again, you do sales, I'll do sales, and Brenda does service. And so we just kept growing the agency that way without even realizing it. But in doing so, I was able to delegate a little easier, because, we were able to draw a line in the sand, say, okay, everything that happens on this side of the line, you and I are responsible for. Everything that happens on this side of the line goes over to Brenda. And it made it a little less bumpy in the beginning. Now, certainly you grow to multiple locations and you got a lot of moving parts. I got to a point to where payroll was taking me like an hour a week to do. You've been there, you're probably still there. And so I had to figure out like some managerial roles to handle, what I call the keys to the castle, right? You never want to give up the keys to the castle too soon, but at some point that should be everyone's end goal, is to be able to step out of the business. And that's when you truly have a business, is when you can go on vacation for 2 months to a tropical island with no cell service, come back, ask, hey, how's it going? And the only answer you get is, oh, it's going good. There was a couple of pieces of mail on your desk I didn't know what to do with. That's when you know that you've created a business, a great business, right? Because there's a lot of people out there.
Did you ever leave for 2 months?
Dude, I left for like a year. I'm not gonna lie.
Wow, gold.
I checked out once I got it. Again, I shouldn't recommend that to anybody, but you'll know. Like I literally ghosted my business, and it took, I would say, a solid 4 years to get to be able to walk away, because I had to retrain not only my staff that I wasn't the go-to catch-all for all their problems, but I had to retrain my customer base, who some of them literally have been with me since day one. And we call him customer number 1. I hope he's still with the agency owner that took over my business, but he would call in and he'd like, hey, I'm your number 1 customer, just calling to make my payment. And we would laugh and joke about it. Years later, he stayed with me from the very beginning. I didn't even know how to quote. And I admitted that to him on that first call, is I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm scared to death right now. Can you please give me some grace and let's work through this together? And if I do it wrong, I apologize in advance, right? So yeah, it took me a while to get to that point, but at the end, I had everything delegated out. I had managers in place. I had an ops manager, just to give you kind of a layout of the business. I had an ops manager that was basically me, when I wasn't there, which was a lot. I had a sales manager that was responsible for driving growth, and I had a service manager responsible for making sure that our customer base was taken care of, our retention stayed high, and we
I've got a
didn't lose too much.
I've got a question for you. Is
Sure.
your was your ops manager, would you describe the personality of your ops manager? Because I would argue that like a sales manager needs to have great leadership qualities. Does an operations manager need to have as good leadership qualities?
Of course. I mean, if that's the backbone of your business and they are you when you're not there, you have to have someone that's highly respected for not only their knowledge, their experience, but how they solve problems. So let's, for example, say that you have a couple of employees that just aren't getting along, right? Like that ops manager needs to step up and let the team know that she's the backstop, right? The end all be all, the solution for any problems that arise, not only within the culture of the organization, but within the customer base, right? Like I've fired customers before that have come in, cursed out a staff member, made one of my staff members cry. And I immediately got on the phone and said, "You're not welcome back in the agency, like ever. Like go get your other policies because these are going to end at the end of the month. Thank you very much. See you later." So having that type of ability to, manage the business, the customers, right? That's key to being able for you as the agency owner to step out of the business and know and trust that the wheels aren't going to fall off the crazy train, right? Like you got to get the train going in the right direction. You got to get going pretty fast so you keep your momentum. And the last thing is that you want to happen is step away and then the wheels fall off of
Okay, good to know. I love you're dropping some gems.
it.
So
That's what I'm here for.
let's I have another question for you. Through your acquisitions, and this is more of a personal question
Sure.
for me, maybe not for my audience, it's a selfish one. But when during the acquisitions, obviously you would probably get you would probably borrow against the value of the books. How quickly would you pay those off? Would you let them run the whole 10-year or 20-year or whatever term it was, or were you aggressive in paying those off?
Yeah, man. So, I did it both ways. I took out, I borrowed a lot of money over the years. Just for those who are curious, I bought out 7 insurance agency owners who retired over my 17-year career. And so, I took out 7 loans. Basically, I never paid cash for not one of those. The smallest loan was my first one, and that was a $135,000 loan. That was my first acquisition. It gave me just enough cash flow to know that I had my rent covered every month after expenses were paid. And then my largest one was, a few $1,000,000. And that one right there, that'll make you pucker a little bit when you sign on that dotted line that you're personally guaranteeing, a couple $1,000,000 loan. So, but yeah, really, it depends on the person. Again, it's unique and different for each person's situation, but I let them ride. I got such good interest rates that I wanted to reinvest back in the business as much as possible. What I mean by that is, I would go for the longest term, say it's 10 years, and I would want my payment as small as possible because I'm going to take that net difference after expenses of the cash flow that I would earn on the loan on the business and reinvest that back into the business. Because you got to think, after the first 2 or 3, maybe 4 acquisitions, the last 3 or 4 that I didn't need any of that cash flow. That was all strictly bottom line profit, right? Because I already had the infrastructure in place. I already had the people. I already had the processes. I already had my other agencies that I grew organically and bought. The first 2 or 3 or 4 agencies that I bought were already paying all the expenses for the business and my personal life. And so, living within my means, I really just kept that. I never refinanced anything, but what would happen is sometimes I would roll in an existing loan into a new one, and that would change the economics a little bit. So it would lower the payment, it would push it out a little bit farther. But I was never worried about necessarily paying them off early because my long-term strategy was always compounding growth of renewals over time. And I always try to stay around a 25 to 30% debt to income ratio. I think that's important if some of your audience or you are looking at acquisitions, as where's kind of that sweet spot. And for me, I never felt like I was back against the wall because I wasn't at a 45 or 50%. I mean, there's institutions that'll lend up to that much, but I just felt comfortable at like 20, 25%. I don't think I even got close to 30, to be honest with you. I'd have to go look back at the numbers. But yeah, for me,
Okay.
I was just use the cash flow to reinvest in the business. And that helped me grow organically. It helped me win trips and win some hardware. I got my 3 trophies behind me that I'm probably most proud of. That was #1 in Texas 3 years in a row. And, when you're competing against 1,200 other agents in the largest state in the United States in the company, and you get #1, there's some pretty healthy bonuses that come along with that. And so again,
That's
using
awesome.
that money to reinvest back in the business. And one year, probably the second or third year before I sold the business, I took a part of that bonus and I bought a couple of flip houses and started my real estate investing career, not knowing a thing about it. But I'm like, hey, I got this bonus. Let me instead of reinvest it back in the business, let me see what happens. And so I took house money, I rolled the dice, and I did I did pretty well. I created a 6-figure profit in 4.5 months, and I thought, you know what, this is either beginner's luck or I might be onto something here. And so
Yeah.
thank goodness it wasn't necessarily beginner's luck. I was able to parlay that and keep reinvesting and growing. And now we're up to, I think we have anywhere between 7 and 10 renovation projects going at a time. And we got a bunch of other stuff too that I'm really excited about.
Okay, that leads me to two more questions, and it's a kind of a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Is what was it about real estate that you said, I'm going to exit out this cash flowing business? This thing is fully operational. It can run itself. You could have easily kept your insurance agencies and still focused on real estate, but you said, mm-mm, I've got something here. I'm going to sell and go all in. Can you talk us through what the logic or mindset was on that?
Yeah, it's very basic. There's this Chinese proverb that always kind of stuck in the back of my mind when I started going down this path of having my insurance agencies on autopilot, yet trying to scale my real estate business. And that's he who chases 2 rabbits catches none, right? And so I had already caught my rabbit on the real estate space or on the insurance space. And I thought, you know what? Let me go ahead and cash out while I know what the value is, because we don't know what's going to happen a year, 5 years, or 10 years down the road. And I'm still, relatively young enough that I can pivot into a different industry if the real estate space isn't where I'm meant to be. And so, I decided, along with other factors and talking with my family, that was the best move for me. And so I took my chips off the table, right, and I cashed out, and that allowed me the focus, like we talked about earlier, to get to a place where 100% of my time, energy, resources are all devoted towards figuring out something that I knew nothing about, right? And that's really what it's taken is 100% all in, the grit, the grind. I mean, I'm waking up, 6:30 every morning now. I'm working till 10:30 at night, and I love it because it gives me purpose, and it's fun, it's exciting, and I'm seeing the hard work and the effort pay off very early. And my goal always was to, replace that income that I walked away from within 3 years or less. And so we're pretty much there on the real estate investment space that I'm now in. And it's a good place to be, and it's because of all the lessons that I learned from scaling that first business that I was able to correlate into some success in the real estate space.
Man, I love it, man. That was perfect, man. And one thing before I get into my last question, man, I just want to acknowledge you, Chris, because when you say, I'm just a regular guy, I'm not like super talented. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Like when you say those things, because I'm used to saying those things, but to see where you are, what you've accomplished, and everything that you've got going on, and are yet to accomplish, it just gives me a little bit of optimism because I'm totally the same. I feel the same way about myself. Like I'm not the smartest guy. I'm very slow. Like it takes me forever to like grasp certain things. I literally, I feel like I get by through my relationships. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I just
It
get
does.
connected with people that are way smarter than me, and then it just naturally overflows into me. And,
That
and
that's so true. I mean, if not for the mentors and the coaches and the friends that have come along throughout my journey, I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at now. I don't have a Harvard degree. I came from nothing. I didn't have two pennies to rub together. I went immediately the day I opened my agency, I was already 25, 30 grand in the hole. I mean, literally, like I borrowed money to open up my agency. And so it's not a situation of like we talked about before the call where, I had this trust fund to kind of live off of and trampoline from. It's like, no, I didn't have anything but grit, drive, determination, and self-motivation, right? Like there was no one pumping me up even. I was basically, on my own to figure this out. There was no plan B, right? And so if I can do it, that's what I always tell people as part of the motivation behind starting something new is it's scary, yes, but anyone can do it. You just have to align yourself. You have to commit first. If you're not committed, it doesn't matter what you do, who you hire, who coaches you, it's not going to work, right? Tim Grover wrote a book about this. It's called Relentless. I mean, it's a phenomenal read, but you got to be so committed that it's literally what consumes your thoughts if you're going to be super successful at anything that you try, whether it's business, whether it's, your personal life, your marriage, whatever it is, being a dad. Like I got two boys now, and they're literally my world, and but I have to stay committed to that. I can't let too many things distract me because then they don't get the best, right? They get the leftovers. And so, be committed to what's most important to you. And it, like I said, man, if I could do it, dude, anyone can do it. And that's what I'm here ultimately to do now is, yes, I want to have some success obviously in the real estate space too, but I'm not doing it for me. I'm not even doing it, necessarily for, what people call, oh, what's the next best thing that you're going to add to your resume. Like I don't care about that stuff. I'm doing it now for my kids to leave a legacy to them, but I'm also doing it as an awareness thing for people who come in and out of my life to motivate them to do greater things. Because if I can just change, and that really should be our priority, right? Any entrepreneurs out there looking, if you could just change one person's life, then it wasn't all for naught. Yeah, the money's good, the success, all the perks, right? The trips, all that's fun, but you got to be you got to be focused on doing it for the right reasons. And for me, I just want to impact people to where it changes their lives. They're motivated, they're inspired, right? If I can inspire 1,000 people, whether I know it or not, from just being me and looking for opportunities to lift people up. I'm not trying to give handouts. I'm trying to give hand ups. I love that saying. And so, if I can inspire the next generation to come behind me and do even better things than I ever thought possible because they're better at technology, right? They're better at social media. I'm still trying to figure out social media. I mean, this TikTok craze and all that is beyond me. But if I can figure it out and get better at looking at a little camera lens and shooting little 3-4 minute videos to inspire people and get them into a different mindset to where they can go out and do big things and crush their goals and provide for their family and leave a legacy for their kids and the next generation behind them, that to me is as satisfying as a few extra bucks in the bank account every month.
Absolutely, man. And you know what? I was going to ask my last question, which is 3 standards and 3 standards or principles that you live your life by. But I think you literally kind of incorporated all of that in that one answer. So I'm not gonna ask that question. But we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Chris, thank you so much for your time, brother. You inspire me. You've
Thanks
been
for
a
having me.
you've been a mentor of mine, whether you realize it or not, and I appreciate our friendship. And I just know that this is going to impact some people. I get a lot of comments, and every time I do, I like to screenshot them and send it to the guests that I have. And so I know I'm going to get a couple for this one. So
That's
thank
awesome.
you again.
Well, I'm not done, yo. I'm not done. I'm still, chugging along in my real estate journey. So, check back with me in a few years and let's have a follow up, man. I'd always love to come on and, tell you what's going on and certainly help you out if I can in your journey. And, if anyone wants to follow along in my journey, I'm mainly on Instagram at the Chris Draper. So hit me up and I look forward to helping motivate and inspire some of your audience.
I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes. I'll blast it on the screen as well. So
Awesome.
thanks again, Chris. If you guys got some value, smash the like button, subscribe, follow Chris, follow me, and thank you guys for watching.